On the Wake Up Radio presents The Center with your host, DC Radical One.
Greetings, Black family, and welcome to On the Wake Up Radio. I am your host, DC Radical One, and you have entered the center. Shout out to our wonderful producer, Cindy Ashby. You can check us out on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, and now iHeartRadio at On the Wake Up Radio. Again, I am your host, DC Radical One, and today is Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad Day. Happy Dr. Khalid Day to everyone out there. I see that we have Sister Farnessa in the building. We have Igwe Heshima in the building. I believe that's brother says he never gets notifications, so it's good to see you here. Look like you first one in the building. And yeah, we're just gonna do a very brief, maybe an hour. Greetings to Lord Bell. Uh Shout out to Lord Bell for the donation in the Cash App as well. Um Straight Black Pride to Brother Desaline. I see people coming through. Man, we're just gonna talk very briefly about Dr. Khalid, his life and legacy, some of my experiences with him, um, and talk about the situation this weekend. That'll be the first thing we talk about, and the rescheduling of the event and things like that. And it seems like it's been a while since I've been on this. It sounds weird to say, well, I can't say this year, but the last month or so has been extremely hectic. Uh, Greetings to you got ripped off BB488 to a BB488 man. Yeah, this last month has been hectic since before the Chancellor Williams Day celebration. It's just been one thing after another. Um, and and kind of culminated in a very weird way with this weekend. So let me get into this weekend real quick. So as y'all know, most of y'all know, we were scheduled to do the Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad Day um, celebration. I was scheduled to do a lecture presentation, and so we had everything thought set up good to go, and we got to the venue, and we had a handful of people in the venue, but of course the large percentage of the audience, probably 90% of the audience. Um, and greetings to Sister Nina. A large percentage of the audience was going to be online audience, including many of you here. And as we were setting things up, we kept noticing there's certain things we couldn't get done. And then eventually, what we realized is that the uh, the Wi-Fi in the venue was not working sufficiently. So we didn't have it wasn't running at a high enough speed for us to be able to really do anything. Like, wasn't running at a high enough speed for to be able to stream, wasn't running at a high enough speed to be able to transfer files between computers. Um, so if it was just a matter of doing a live event and not a live stream, a live event with an audience, to clarify, then it would have been, we still could have done it. But the fact that it was being live streamed and the fact that you all had paid to see it be live streamed, and we just could not get the Wi-Fi to work in any capacity that would allow us to do that, we end up having to cancel the event. And we went through, every scenario and every means that we could to try to just get it fixed and have the event. We talked to the ISP and all this stuff. And if you ever had Wi-Fi issues, um, it just is what it is. And I see the brother say we got to do a test run. Well, this is the thing. We did it in the same venue with the same equipment in that we did for the Dr. Chancellor Williams Day, and we've used the venue since then. So it was just one of those things that just happened where you think you have your you think you have everything in place, but brother, you got ripped off. So it sounds like y'all got caught in the social media censorship. I'm not even sure if you. I'm not even sure which social media censorship. I mean, I get a lot of times. Well, as y'all know, what Jeannie's been taking, brother Jeannie's been taking completely off. He's been taken completely off of social media, but I just kind of get a weird. Sometimes I just get a weird thing on social media where it seems like no one sees my stuff for a while, and then I get a lot of followers, and then it just kind of ebbs and flows. I'm at the point I don't pay it any attention this time, but this was just different. This was just a technical issue, and of course, the most ironic thing was that the owner of Everlasting Life, where we do a lot of our stuff, the reason we didn't do it there is because of the new regulations with the whole COVID and all that stuff. So we really thought it'd be advantageous to not have it there because there's a limitation on the number of people he can have in his venue. But he told us that actually we could have done it there, and we've done stuff there, and the equipment and the Wi-Fi. Well, no, actually, I haven't live streamed anything there, but he has some better equipment and sound and things like that at his venue. So that venue is kind of more advantageous, and you have a restaurant attached to it. So, and make a long story short, that's what it was. Just a Wi-Fi issue that wouldn't allow us to live stream, and so that just short circuited everything that we were trying to do. So we are going to reschedule the event. We're going to do the event because being completely honest, I spent a lot of time on that lecture, and weirdly enough, even though I feel like it's very timely, the lecture is also very timeless in the sense that there were a lot of clips of Dr. Khalid speaking on various subjects embedded within the lecture, which is one of the reasons why I'm not playing clips tonight. I thought about playing clips tonight, and I was like, you know what? I'll say that for the lecture because when you see it, I told people that Dr. Khalid is kind of the co-host of the lecture, so it's a different style of lecture than what I normally do, and so I wanted people to see it, and the subject matter goes into some things that are very needed, a very needed discussion. And to be completely honest, it's one of those things that lecture was probably going to get this YouTube page shut down after I do it. I'm just letting y'all know now, because the hats are a focus. Some other people are a focus, and in this time, the hats and what's going on in this country are very relevant, and they're relevant to us because what I see happening, me and Brother Jenny talked about, and he see the same thing, and then he showed me an example. The hats are going this war that we're currently in, and it would be so interesting if Dr. Collar was here, what he would see about this, because there's never been a time that at least in my lifetime, where two groups of Euros are going at it in this country like this. The hats, understanding who they are and understanding how they operate and things like that are very important, because they're going to try to get our people into the middle of this thing that they're doing. And you already see it where they're using I believe there's a black police officer who, defended the Capitol, which I just say he did his job. I'm not going to judge him on, I don't know his politics or his beliefs or whatever. So I'm just gonna say he did his job. He probably was defending himself more than he was defending anything else. Because let's be completely honest, if you're armed and you see a large number of Yurugu running towards you, you're gonna pull your firearm, you know, and you're gonna unleash it and go from there. So it is what it is. So I'm not going to judge the man and say he was defending the Capitol. I'm going to say he was defending his life until proven otherwise. And but the media, which the hats are a big part of that, are putting him out in front and making him a quote unquote hero, and that's very dangerous for Black people. And I'm gonna get Brother Genie on to really discuss that. I don't know if y'all seen his appearances on T West show on Afro Synergy, but yeah, those are worth looking at if you haven't. But anyway, so with that being said, because I'm not going to be on here, but maybe an hour 15 minutes, because I do have things to do. Just really talking quickly about Dr. Khalid Muhammad and his effect on me and my generation. And for me to talk about is, depending on how old you are, it's hard to understand what I'm about to say. At that time, it was possible to hear someone and not know who they were. Like in today's time, it's totally different, right? You have computers in your hand, you hear something, you look it up, the person pops up, or whatever the case may be. Or you hear a name and you can look them up and you find out all about them, right? In the 80s, because I was a teenager, that wasn't possible. So when, for example, it was so weird is that you can hear someone and maybe we'll have seen them or seen a book or something like that, and not even be able to connect the two people until someone told you that, oh, this person is this person, right? So for me personally, as y'all know, at least I think I said it, my introduction into knowledge came through Malcolm X, right? And when I was in high school, I met a brother that we became tight. We became like brothers. He really introduced me to like the Nation of Islam's philosophy and introduced me into knowledge. And we would go to bookstores together and things like that. And he was the one that got me to start going to the mosque, which at this point in DC was mosque number 4, which was at that time on Kenilworth Avenue in Northeast, right? Their mosque now they have taken over an old church in Southeast. So when I first heard the voice of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, that was on probably the first time I remember was on the Public Enemy Nation of Millions record, right? I had no idea who he was. And you had no idea that later you would meet him and he would have an event and he would come to DC and would do security at that event and things like that. And so the first time I saw Dr. Khaled, I believe I was like 21 years old, something like that. And he was here in DC at a church up Northwest, big old huge church. I can't even remember the church. And he was the main speaker. And it was so funny because it was very difficult to do security for Dr. Khaled because you could not pay attention to him, right? Because he was so magnetic and so charismatic that you would forget that you were on post. And I remember a lot of times because I was new. I was relatively new to the nation because I had been going to the mosque, but I hadn't at that time. Well, before that, I hadn't joined because I had, you know. Anyway, long story. I don't feel like getting into, but on Pope's, like I said, you could not really pay attention to him. You had to pay attention to the audience because if not, you would get caught up. You would get caught up because Dr. Collins is very, very charismatic. He would have all this deep knowledge, and then he would you know say something humorous in between, and the crowd would um laugh and just enjoy the interaction with him. It's an experience. I can't even really. There's no other speaker that I've heard um similar to him. There's no other man that I've met similar to him, um, with that level of charisma, and yet that level, I think Europeans call it gravitas, where a person it's serious and how can I put it? It's weird. Like they have a heavy presence. You know what I'm saying? Like you feel their presence when you're around them, and they are. When he was alive, he was a larger than life figure. You understand what I'm saying? And as a young man, seeing him, he kind of became Dr. Khaled really for our generation. And I said it when Malcolm X was assassinated. Um, the brother that's an actor, I can't think of his name, but he called Malcolm our black shining prince, right? And I've always said, and I'm sure someone else has said it too, for my generation that was that we were young, Dr. Khaled was our black shining prince. He was bold, fearless. And when I say fearless, I mean fearless. Like, for example, and I have this in the lecture. The whole the James Byrd case, right? BB48, man. Thank you, Ossie Davis. The James Byrd case. For those who remember, I believe it's '97, where they dragged that brother behind a truck and dragged him down the street to his arm and his head popped off, right? And Dr. Collar and New Black Panthers went down there to make sure that justice was served. We don't think about it now, or it's hard to envision now a group of brothers doing what they did because they went to Jasper, Texas, which like I had never even heard of the place. Okay, so this is like deep South Southern redneck. I mean, the Klan was out there, like the Klan, not not no pretend Klan, but like the old school Klan in their Klan uniforms with their insignias and their guns and that Klan. You understand what I'm saying? The Klan that runs black people out of town Klan was there, and Dr. Khaled and New Panthers, they went down there and they got the conviction. No one is so deep. No one ever. Okay, let's think about this, right? We in this recent time we seen Trayvon um with that case, and what's his name, George Zimmerman, the hat, small hat Zimmerman getting off. Seen all these police get off and things like that. We never think about this. No one ever talks about this, right? Now the New Panthers, as an aside, were down there with the Trayvon thing, and the police actually kept a couple of the one of the brothers I heard was locked up when the verdict was given for the Trayvon thing. So the police short circuited that, but they went down there, man, and they got that conviction. No one can convince me otherwise because we don't ever see any people that murder us don't get convicted, right? They got convicted. They got the death penalty in Texas. And no one can convince me that it was not because Dr. Khaled and the Panthers went down there armed, because it's Texas. So, Texas, you can go down there with everything except maybe a tank. Maybe you can go with a tank if you can afford it. and they showed up and they just kept the pressure on and just let them know that they were going to be there, they were going to be watching, and that there was going to be justice one way or another. And to me, that was like the pinnacle of who Dr. Khalid was, because there is no, I mean, to me, there's no bolder action than a black man getting a group of black men together with guns to go to one of the most, um, I would say one of the most racist, but yeah, every part of America is racist in its own way. But yeah, one of the most openly racist places that you could go. I mean, the only worst place you can end up going and doing something like this, like Mississippi, Alabama, but that part of Texas, to me, the same thing. And to basically, and without saying anything really, basically threaten the system to enact justice one way or another. It's a monumental thing that is never discussed. It's almost been written out of history. No one ever says. And what's so deep is that what they did with Urugu, because it's so tricky. They took and they made a James Byrd law, but they tied the James Byrd law to Matthew Shepard, the homosexual who some Euros killed for whatever reason. I don't even really remember, but I do remember them tying the murder of our brother who did nothing. He was murdered because he was black, and tying it to a homosexual. So it became the James Byrd Matthew Shepard law instead of just the James Byrd law. And looking back at it now, I realized that this was kind of, even then they were tying homosexuality to blackness, and using the murder of a black man to do so. And of course, now we look at it, that's literally the whole blueprint for what Black Lives Matter is. But at the time we weren't thinking anything about that. It was just astounding to see Dr. Khalid down there doing that work. And we should be forever thankful for that. It was because no one else would have done it. And it's so interesting when, and you can't talk about Dr. Khalid without getting into this, being completely honest. Uh, when the whole situation happened with the King College speech and the Dr. Khalid being reprimanded by Minister Farrakhan, and the time leading up to the Million Man March, and if you ever seen the Million Man March, you know that there were a lot of people on that stage. A lot of people got to speak, but there were also a lot of people who didn't get to speak. There were a lot of voices that we didn't hear from. And even though it was a march of unity and things like that, and I was there early that morning in October 1995, extremely, like 5 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, early. It's a travesty, to not have Dr. Khalid there, who was, without a doubt, the strongest revolutionary voice that we had. See, Lord Bell say he went off on the hats. Yeah, he went off on the hats. That King College speech, yeah. Yeah, some of that's in the lecture too. And it was, only those who are really close to Dr. Khalid can tell you. I can only tell you from the outside of having been in the nation. When you're part of an organization, you have a deep love for that organization. What they did, the way they kind of, man, what they did to Dr. Khalid, as far as like leaving him in limbo, excuse me, was very hurtful, because a lot of people don't know Dr. Khalid was actually in the nation before he was in the first iteration of the nation as a young man, the under Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And then when Minister Farrakhan decided to rebuild the nation and officially announced it in 81, but started rebuilding it like 77, 78, Dr. Khalid was there, early in that rebuilding process, right? And he would, like, when I say that he loved Minister Farrakhan in a way that he would die and kill for him, right? This is the type of man Dr. Khalid was. He was loyal. Like, if you were with him, he was with you 100%. And he walked around with a big giant Bible with a 38 in it to protect Minister Farrakhan. And then, and the joke, it became a joke in the nation. Like, eventually, I don't know if I don't think he had told Farrakhan. I think somebody, I can't. I'm trying to remember the story. Either I think one day Mr. Farrakhan asked him why he always carried that big giant Bible, and then it eventually came out that what was in it. So it was just the Bible cover, the pages were cut out, and 38 was in the Bible. So that's the type of love he had for Minister Farrakhan. This is what it is, and anybody knows the history know that I'm not making up stories here, right? There are people that are much closer to the situation than me who are still alive who can tell you this. And so to go through that King College situation and for it to not really be resolved, man, was I just felt like that was, looking back on it, it was very hurtful because I had been in the nation. So I knew how it was, knew how the brotherhood was, man. You get used to seeing the brothers, you work out together, you train together. When I was in the nation, we were, when I first came in, they were already patrolling like some of the worst parts of the city, and they would take us to these places to train. So, like Clifton Terrace in Northwest, for those who are familiar with DC, Clifton Terrace doesn't. I mean, I think they just that part of town has been gentrified out. Yeah, I don't think any of that stuff exists anymore. I don't really go in that part of town now because it's so Europeanized. I rarely even go over there to even know what's over there. Sister Nina says, back in the 90s, my brother had the privilege to attend the event here in Riverside, California, when Dr. Khalid was speaking, the same place that Ed tried to take Dr. Khalid's life with a firearm. Remind me to get to that part too. But wow, that's interesting. That's very interesting. But yeah, and that's another thing, Dr. Khalid's fearlessness, because for someone to attempt to assassinate you and for you to continue on the path and to continue what you're doing, again, we don't we really, man, this man's life really isn't examined, and really he isn't really given the praise and things that he deserved, because a lesser man would have broken under the weight of what the trials that he went through. you know when he was going through the thing with the nation, he had already seen the example of the whole Malcolm X Elijah Muhammad thing, and he did his best to avoid that for a long time. And yet it seemed almost as if there were forces in the nation that were trying to replicate that, right? And so for him to still continue to do work, and for him to try to build something for Black people, and for him to be relentless, right, in his pursuit of Black liberation. And here's something that people don't understand. Like, it's so funny now, to a degree, it's safe, and everyone can say how much they love Dr. Khalid and things like that. But I'm going to be completely honest. You, in that time, right, being around Dr. Khalid in that post nation period was very difficult, between that transition between that post nation into that new Black Panther Party time, because I mean, it just, he kind of was in limbo, and he kind of just was out there. And so, and you didn't really know what the situation was because he didn't know what the situation was, right? He reached out to Minister Farrakhan multiple times, and you can find all this stuff. You see clips of it on YouTube. He talks about it. And Minister Farrakhan, greetings, unique, want to express. Um, for whatever reason, just kept him at arm's length, you know. And it's very weird because you listen to some of Farrakhan's speeches, and he will talk about hopefully him and his brother can reunite, things like that. But everyone knows Dr. Khaled reached out to him multiple times, and he act like he didn't have time for him or whatever. And then to come and say the opposite, it's like, uh, yeah, I've never understood that from Mr. Farrakhan, and that it is what it is. That's all I'm gonna say on it. Um, in the grand scheme of things, I guess there's no reason to litigate that, but it is a large part of Dr. Khaled's life, so it has to be discussed. But it's very, man, it's very hard to get people to understand how much courage, and I give credit to those brothers who stood with him in that time, how much courage it took to stay with Dr. Khaled during that time, and how dangerous it was because everyone knew what had happened with Malcolm, and it kind of was, you didn't think about it like openly, but it like that threat was lurking. If you understand what I'm saying, like you didn't know what was going on because like you didn't know what was going on. Even even with the nation, you weren't couldn't really know what was going on because, like I said, like the Million Man March, the fact that there were so many people who weren't there, the fact that Dr. Khaled wasn't there, of course, the fact that of course Dr. John Henry Clark wasn't there because Dr. Clark and Farrakhan got there's a history that goes back 50, 60 years with them. Dr. Clark was a big him and Malcolm were close. So that was a thing. But my bad. But so being around Dr. Khaled at that time was a trying time for everybody, and it was a tense time in the nation. It was a tense time in the whole nationalist community, and it's really kind of hard for people to understand because if you if you decided to join Dr. Khaled, you knew one, how fierce he was, how dedicated he was, how demanding he was, and like it was a thing that like it was a heavy thing if you said you're gonna roll with Dr. Khaled. Like it was not something to be taken lightly, and it's something that I had when I was young. I had thought about, um, and it just never happened, and I regretted it because when I found out, Brother Lord Bell says, "You think a lot of NOI members should have checked Farrakhan?" Well, the thing about it, brother, is in an organization like that, that's very first of all, it's a religious organization, right? And so it's very top down religious organization, and so the people are going to defer to the religious leader, um, right, wrong, or indifferent, you know. And many of them believe that Dr. Khaled was wrong because I've heard people say that the minister had warned him before or whatever the case was. But the thing I never understood about that, and then I move forward a little bit, I never understood is that the parts of that lecture had been done by Dr. Khaled before. So, what was it in that time frame that made it different? And what was it that made that something that could not be reconciled? That was the thing I didn't understand. Why was it never reconciled? Why was it not reconcilable? However, at the same time, I do believe that Dr. Khaled leaving the nation and then that opportunity with the new Black Panther Party coming up and being the chairman of that, I believe that freed Dr. Khaled to do important things like that Jamesburg case because no one else would have done that Jamesburg thing. No one. No, at that time in what 1997, no one else would have done that. The nation would not have done that. Um, I'm just trying to think some of the organizations that were around. Yeah, there's other organizations, Dr. York and those people. None of them would have done that. So that was work that only he was qualified to do, only he was willing to do, and only he had the power to do. Um, uh, Trying to see, Brother Desaline said something. What has it got? Oh man. Anyway, man, don't even get me started. I don't even know why I opened up this can, but it is a part of Dr. Khaled's life. But like I said, no one else could have done that work, and no one else would have um gotten that conviction. You know, people can talk about the lawyers and this and this and that. No one can convince me again that Dr. Khaled and those guns didn't make that happen. And going back to the Million Man March, when I really thought about it, not having those voices, because Steve Coakley was in town, because they actually had an event like the day before or a couple of days before the Million Man March. Maybe it was that Saturday before, with Dr. Khaled. I believe it's Dr. Khaled and Steve Coakley. And Dr. Clark may have been there too, if I'm not mistaken. If anybody remembers that or they have the video, that you can correct me, because I heard about it, but I didn't attend it. So my my recollection, my information on that is limited, and I actually have no idea why. I think I didn't go because I think I heard about it after the fact, which is weird. But by today's standard, it's weird to think that something that big you wouldn't hear about it immediately, but is a different time. Oh, greetings, Brother Patrick. I didn't see you when you came in. Brother Patrick said he's glad he got to meet Dr. Khaled a few times before he passed. That's beautiful, brother. Yeah, well, you up there in NYC, so yeah, that was his stomping grounds. Um, but yeah, I missed that event, and it's hard to explain to people who are younger that you just didn't have instantaneous access to information. And Lord Bell says there's a movie based on that case in Texas. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Um, so in order to get information about events, for example, in the city, there were certain places you had to go, and they would have the flyers, and the people would tell you, there's certain bookstores and restaurants and things like that. Because we had at that time Georgia Avenue, where Howard University is. At that time, there was a set of black bookstores and black restaurants. So basically, on from the southern end of Georgia Avenue, going up maybe about 6 blocks, was just a set of black-owned businesses, and that was right adjacent to Howard University, and that was a place that you went for information. So, anything that was going on, that's where you went. And if you didn't go up there, or you didn't hear about a word of mouth, you just missed it. So it's not like now where you got social media and you got. I'm trying to think. Were people even texting back then? Yeah, people might not even be texting back then. Or maybe that was the early days of texting. I don't know, man. It's so long ago. But anyway, it was just a different world informationally. Like things happen, you could just miss stuff because you missed it, unless you were actually part of the organization or knew someone in the organization, or you went to the right places or things like that. Cause I can't remember what year it was. I think it was 96, 97, where I had left the nation, and I ran into I heard about a Dr. Khaled event, and I went, and lo and behold, I'm standing there in line, ready to go into the event, and I'm wearing. I know I told this story before, and I'm wearing my Universal Flag T-shirt because I was in the Nation of Gods and Earth, the 5%ers at the time, and Dr. Khaled just walks right up to me, right while I'm standing there, talking to a brother, and he's like, "Peace, God," and I'm like, "Peace." He's like, "Yeah, brother, I need you to direct the people. We're changing the venue, blah, 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 blah. We're going down to such and such and such. I need you to let all the people know." right? Now, I even though I had met him before, I doubt very seriously that he remembered me because he didn't react like he did. He just saw the universal flag and gave me instructions, and I followed the instructions. I didn't. It's so hilarious. I didn't even think about it. Like, I didn't hesitate. If he had said, "Hey, there are two Urugu over there. I need you and that brother to go over there and bust him upside the head," I just would have ran over there and bust him upside the head. I wouldn't even question it or had a reason to. I wouldn't even ask. Maybe I would have asked after the fact, but I was young. I was early 20s, man. Dr. Khalid gave instructions. You just follow the instructions. There ain't even there's no discussion, you know. Um, and then we went to that event, and it was him and Steve Coakley, and it was somebody else. I can never remember the third person. And that was a beautiful event. And it was so funny. A few years ago, it was a brother that was in SBPM, and I was talking about that event, and he was like, "You were there," and I'm like, "Yeah, you were there." And it was so funny that we were both at that event and didn't know it and didn't realize that we were at the same event with Dr. Khalid and Steve Coakley. And man, Dr. Khalid was just like I said, he was larger than life while he was alive. And really, man, a beautiful brother that really, I mean, Dr. Khalid really, really loved black people. It's hard to express now because you don't even, it's so rare that you see that. And that's the thing that strikes me most is how much he loved black people and how much he hated the enemies of black people because he loved black people, you know, and how fearless and bold he was about it. And I believe it was Lord Bill. It was somebody who was talking about when he was leaning in on hats. Yeah, see, and that's another thing. You know, the whole controversy with the King College thing is that Dr. Khalid was speaking on the secret relationship between blacks and Jews, which was, of course, a book produced by the Nation of Islam research team. And so while he's out propagating and defending the literature that the nation had put out, this whole thing happens. And so the whole thing is just weird when you think about it. And but it was obvious that and it's possible because it's a close enough time frame, but I can't be sure. It's possible that maybe the Million Man March was already in the works. And then it's possible that the minister was trying to soften up the nation's message, I guess, to get more people to that. But Dr. Collins said something deep one time. He said that you can always, you can get a bunch of people into a venue if you soften up the message, which is what I found to be true. In our iteration of this fight, like the LGBT wasn't a big thing at that time, and they weren't trying to like push us into um that thing at this time, but they had already started. Come to find out, right? And he talked about this because he talked about if you listen to I believe it's Revolution is a Solution, right? Which actually I think was done here in DC. If you listen to that, he talks about they would go to events, like they went to an event for Mumia Abu Jamal. And so they at the event for Mumia Abu Jamal, and have Urugu there, and you got LGBT there, and they saying whatever they saying. Then Dr. Collins said, they go there and say Black Power and say what they say, and the people don't want to give them the mic and don't want them to speak and things like that. So the LGBT attack on Black Power actually was already taking place. At that time, I wasn't deep enough in the movement to even be aware of it. I wasn't as active at that time. And but yeah, he just talked about like if you open up the door to everyone, then you can get all types of people to come and be a part of what you're doing. But at the same time, the whole it's like what Malcolm X said with the coffee and the cream. You put enough cream in it, you don't have any coffee left. And Dr. Collins was kind of warning us about the same thing, that the strength of the movement would be watered down if you just open it up to everybody. And that's in what this is what we see now, right? This is what we see. You see this Black Lives Matter stuff, and yeah, I remember I was up in Brooklyn, and I was coming out of Nicholas, Brooklyn, at the old location. For those that are from New York, and I come out and I turn around, and it's a Black Lives Matter rally, and I hear all these people yelling Black Lives Matter, and I look up, and it's like 85% white people, and I'm just looking like, what in the world? Now this is in Brooklyn, right? 85% white people yelling Black Lives Matter in Brooklyn, and I'm just looking at it, and that encapsulates perfectly what Dr. Khalid warned us about. And I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't at the space then, because actually I don't even think I saw that. I didn't see that lecture till later, because again, yeah, the GLM, gay lesbian movement, indeed, brother. Um, but yeah, it was so surreal to just walk out of Nicholas, Brooklyn, which is a black owned bookstore, and turn the corner and bam, is so called Black Lives Matter with 85% Yorugu walking down the street yelling. And I know I picked up my phone and filmed it, but I don't know what I did with that footage. I just couldn't believe it. Like, I knew they were astroturf, but I just didn't had never seen that many. I'd never seen a march that they did where it featured that many euros to black people ratio, to the point that if they weren't yelling Black Lives Matter and they didn't have the shirts on, some of them didn't have the shirts on, you wouldn't have known what it was. But those are the types of things that Dr. Khalid warned us about, that looking back on it, were already, the seeds were being planted before, back in 2000, um, when he was talking about it. So, and that's been 20 years ago. And I remember I was talking to a brother here, local brother, the brother that actually heads up um, the organization that Brother Genie was in, brother Kush, the Black Unifier. And he was saying that they met Dr. Khalid like months before he made his transition, and that he was saying, they were talking, and he was saying he would get in contact with him. He didn't know if some strong brothers here like that, and that they would definitely get in contact. And then he transitioned. He talked about that, and he showed the pictures and everything. And it's just that, anybody you talk to, man, the impact that Dr. Khalid had on their life. Um, I'm gonna be honest, we lost something when we lost him. And it wasn't just that we lost him, but if you look at that time period of about 5 to 10 years before we lost him, losing him was like the culmination. It was like the end of an era, because at that time, Dr. Clark, I think Dr. Clark had transitioned. And one time I had wrote it out. I had looked at it and wrote it out. So I can't remember everybody. So if anybody that I missed, but I remember Stokely, Kwame Ture had got sick, and he said that he said CIA gave him cancer. He just straight out said the CIA gave him cancer. He had gotten very ill. Um, and I believe he transitioned before Dr. Khalid. It's kind of hard to remember because they were all kind of jumbled together. Amos Wilson transitioned like, seemed like right before the Million Man March, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Shaka Musa Shango, I believe he transitioned that same decade. So we just lost so many. We had lost so many people in that time frame before Dr. Khalid. And at that time, if you really look at it, of the strong, militant, no nonsense voices, he was the last one, right? And somebody's gonna ask, well, what about Minister Farrakhan? At that, like, Minister Farrakhan had been sick, but to the point where actually I thought he was gonna transition. I didn't think he was gonna make it. That's when he had his cancer and everything like that. And I didn't even think he was going to make it. And then I guess he started getting better or whatever. But Dr. Khalid was the last strong, militant, masculine voice of that generation. And we lost something as a group. Brother Patrick said Dr. John Henry Clark passed away in '98, right? Okay, I thought so. And Amos Wilson in '95. Yeah, I remember Amos Wilson in '95 because I always thought about um, him being at the Million Man March, how monumental that would have been. You got ripped off said after calling out scholars transition small hats and Urugu hypercharge their plans 15 years later. Look at the condition of our people. Indeed, indeed. And but I don't know if y'all ever heard Brother Genie talk about it, but he said that in I can't remember the year. Maybe I can get him on to ask him, but he said in either the late '90s or I believe it's the late '90s or early 2000s. Um, Either late '90s or the early 2000s. They were at Willie Wilson's church here in uh, Southeast DC, and that there was a video that was being played, and they had all these LGBT people there at the church. Now, again, this is a black church, right? There are all these LGBT people, and they played this video talking about how black people need to accept the LGBT brother and things like that, right? And he said all these black leaders were on the video, and I've heard him tell the story so many times, and then I actually heard Brother Kush tell the story too. So that's what made it fun. You get to hear from two different people, two different perspectives. And to your point about hypercharging their plans, yeah, those plans were in effect at that time, and that was kind of like the announcement. And so what happened is that the brothers from PKB, they wanted to speak. Kush wanted to speak, and they didn't want him to speak. And somebody had came up tried to take the mic out of his hand. And anyway, so yeah, somebody tried to take the mic out of his hand. Anyway, he spoke. That's all I think. That's all I can say. He spoke and he expressed himself. But yeah, just to your point that those plans were in effect then, even before Dr. Khalid made his transition, or right around that time, which means if we saw it, if they got to see it, PKB, Genie, and them brothers, then yeah, even before Dr. Khalid made his transition, I just think that, like you said, as we were losing those leaders, it became the optimum time for them to unleash what they unleashed. And Lord Bell said, how was Dr. Khalid making money if he broke away from the NOI? Brother, I'll be honest, I have no idea. I know people gave donations at the events and at the speaking engagements and things like that. But what ended up happening during that time is that before black student unions and black student alliances who would bring people in like Dr. Khalid and others, John Henry Clark, even though John Henry Clark had tenure at one of the universities in New York, and Brother Patrick, he can help me out. I know he knows. But they started taking those things away, and so uh those type of leaders could not get money from that. So to be completely honest, brother, I do not know. You would have to ask a brother like Malik Zulu. Yeah, you had to ask Malik. He would know more than anyone because the brother Hashim and Zinga, he transitioned recently, so you can't even ask him. But yeah, let's see how much time I got. All right, I go about another 20 minutes. But that they really hit us hard when I remember. I'll never forget, man, when I heard that Dr. Khalid made his transition. I was at a young lady's house, um, and for some reason I got up and I went in the other room. Everybody in the house was sleeping. I'm talking about it was like maybe 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I got up and I turned on the news, and it came on CNN, and I was just sitting there in shock, in the dark. It's totally dark except for the TV, totally dark in the house. And I just was stunned. I was stunned, you know, and I didn't know what to do. And it was so it was so crazy. It was so devastating. And like the sister that I was dealing with at the time, she was younger than me, and she didn't really have a lot of knowledge. And it was a few little things I taught her, but not really a lot. She didn't really know who I was, and in that aspect of what I had been through. Because by this time, I had already I had knowledge over a decade. Uh, Brother BB40, man, said, "Do I plan to read Malik's book?" Yeah, I'll probably purchase the book and read it just to see, just to have it in my collection. Yeah, I will do that. I plan to do that. But yeah, that night, man, I was so I was so devastated that now brothers understand this when I say this. I was so devastated that sister came in the room, asked me what was what was wrong, um, and I really couldn't really even talk, and I left her there and went across town and went home at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Right? I mean, I don't actually really know what time it was. I just know it was the middle of the night and it was dark. And I did not live next door. I live across town. So that's how devastated I was when I heard the news. And I didn't even it I didn't even it really, I'll be completely honest, it knocked me off my square so much that I felt like the entire movement had passed when Dr. Khalid transitioned. I just felt like there was no more blackness left in the world, for lack of a better word. Like that's like kind of like the only way I can express it. That's how I felt at the time. I didn't feel there were any more leaders. I didn't feel there was anybody doing any work. It just felt like the movement had died when he transitioned. And it knocked me off my square, and I moved away from the movement for a good decade, you know. And it was only like just so many things happening that just pulled me back. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest, it devastated me. It knocked me off my core. Knocked me off my square. It shook me to my core. I just could not believe it. I would have been, it's crazy. I would have been in a better emotional state if they had said that Dr. Khaled died in a gun battle with him against 20 Klansmen. You understand what I'm saying? I would have been in a better emotional space. But for him to just transition like that, and then, later on, all the questions and the mystery of it, and the sister he was with, and what her actions were, and what happened at the hospital, and what the hospital, what the doctor said, and um, what Malik did, and it just all that stuff surrounding that came later. Um, but in that, right, I didn't even know about that stuff, but in that time, it didn't matter. You see what I'm saying? Like, man, it's hard for me to just express. Like, a part of your world had ended. You see what I'm saying? A a a part of your life, for me. I'm just speaking about me personally. A part of my life had ended, right? It was as devastating to me then as losing a parent later in life has been, or as losing um, any other close family member would be. And this is the thing: I was not close with Dr. Khalid. You understand what I'm saying? But what he meant, what he represented, right, as having been um, someone to aspire to be like, as representing, he was a representation of black manhood, that when you're if you're in your 20s, right, he's what you want to be as a young you want to be as a young aspiring black man who wants to be strong and be for his people and be fearless and be a warrior, as Baba Rudy would say, because I didn't know about Baba Rudy then. To be an Asafo, he was the manifestation of an Asafo. He was a manifestation of an African warrior. He was a manifestation of a revolutionary, right? He was the embodiment, I guess the word I'm looking for, of these things. And so for him to be gone, it was if those things stopped for me. Like, how is it possible, in my mind, how is it possible that the ancestors would allow this to happen? How is it possible, right, for us to have lost all these other people and then lose this giant of a man who could at least have been a bridge into a new generation? It was, I mean, brothers and sisters, I'm not gonna lie, I was destroyed. Just being completely honest. Like, that part, that his transition ended that chapter of my life in a very real way, and sent me um down a dark hole to Negrodom. I'm just being completely honest. I'm being completely transparent here. So those brothers that continued on the path and tried to continue to work and continue the legacy, I have immense respect for them just from that, because I wasn't, I couldn't, I just was not completely off my square, you know? And it's just one of those things that when you look at stuff and you look at how we've lost leaders, and you look at how people reacted to the death of certain people and things like that, at that moment you understand, you understand, like, you understand, even though I'm not a fan of Martin Luther King by any stretch of imagination, but you can understand why people would, like, you know what, let's just tear up everything. you know you know you understand how some things went on after Malcolm X's death, because it's just so, man, it's just so painful, like, you're looking at a person that's really like your hope for black people, right? If y'all understand what I'm saying, like, he's the embodiment of blackness. And we, just being completely honest, we've never, since that time, we haven't replaced that level of leadership. We haven't replaced that level of manhood. We haven't, and we have, there are people on the scene who I love and respect. We have elders on the scene I love and respect. Baba Baruti, love and respect. Baba Asher Kwesi, here in DC, Baba Zulu, who runs Ujima Shule. And I think Baba Zulu's birthday was a couple of days ago. I don't remember the exact day. He's a wonderful brother. Maybe I try to have him on one day because he's getting up there. He's lived a lot of life. He's a human library. So I definitely want to introduce y'all to him. So I can get in if I can get in contact with him, get him on the show. Um, but as far as like a young, fiery, militant, there may be, man, there may be, because our manhood is being drained slowly. It may be 4 or 5 generations before we produce a man in the semblance of Dr. Khalid. And true story, right? About God, 10 or 12 years ago, I was very sick, you know, and I think, to be completely honest, I thought I was going to die because I had never been that sick and I didn't know what was going on. Um, and I had remember telling the ancestors, I said, well, look, I don't want to go out like this, okay? So I don't know what's going on. Now, you gotta understand, I'm still, at this time, I'm still in, at that, yeah, I'm still in my 30s at that time. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to go out like this. So if y'all let me make it through this and get back to full health and strength and everything, I will dedicate the rest of my life to doing race work, right? Just, put me in a position to know where to go. Um and I said that if I find someone, with a similar spirit to Dr. Khaled, I will, I'm gonna ride with that person till the wheels fall off. And, weirdly enough, true story, eventually looking for Dr. Khaled videos, I saw like a clip or a promo or something of Brother Jenny on YouTube. This was this was goodness, when I saw that. Maybe 2010, 2011, something like that. True story. But Lord Vale says, would you agree that Janie is the closest person we have that's someone similar to Dr. Khaled? Indeed, indeed, indeed. Um, and it's funny because I saw that clip, and then when I saw him speak, and then I met him, um, the spirit at that time was similar. Like Genie is, he don't want me to tell nobody, but he's mellowed out a little bit. But at that time, man, he was on fire. You know what I'm saying? He was on fire, and that's the one thing they have in common is, with everything going on, man. Jenny has a great love for black people, man. You know, I don't think anyone has as much love for black people as Dr. Khaled. I'm gonna be completely honest. No one like Dr. Khaled loved black people, and black people could feel it, and they loved him. Like he could go anywhere where there were black people, man, and get love and respect. Like anywhere, it was like on earth. Cause, and I forgot to even mention this. I want to talk about this real quick. And I wish, I know Malik has, I'm sure he has the videos. Someone has the videos. When Dr. Collar went to Azania, man, and uh, spoke with them, man, and built with them and talked about revolution and things like that. Again, this going to places like this where people are still like, we kind of forget that Azania in the 80s, and even when did they when did Mandela get out? Somebody help me out. But going in that there at that time, they were still killing people, and I mean, they were still fighting a war for their survival out here, you know. And to go there and build with those people and try to build them up, like that's, again, man, that's fearless. Because if something happens, they lock you up. You know, America's not going to care. I don't think they're going to send Messi Jesse Jackson like they did. They sent him to Libya that time. I don't think that's going to happen. Let's see. Lord Bell says my college professor put me on to the irritated genie, and I'm just hooked ever since. Interesting, interesting. And you got ripped off says 2013 was the fire that sent Jenny to hardcore work. People thought leaving the job was going to break him. Yeah, well, he was on fire before that, but then that just was like, in a way you're freed. But I mean, it cost him. It cost him a lot. And that's the thing. The biggest thing, um, Brother Patrick said, Mandela got out 90. Thank you, brother. Um, what people don't really realize is that there is a price to pay to attempt to liberate black people. And this is the most difficult part, man. I'm not trying to get deep into this because I'm really supposed to be getting off here in the next 5 minutes, but I might go about 9. It's very difficult for the people to see the difference between those who are sincere and those who aren't. And that's one of the reasons why it took me a long time to even it's difficult for me to ask the people for any type of monetary support, right? Because there's so many charlatans and fakers and con men and swindlers and bamboozlers out here, right? That you don't want to be in the same boat with those people, But the work is hard, man. No one short of and shout out to everybody that bought a ticket for this event because there was a lot more people than I thought. It was a lot of y'all. I appreciate that. And please, if you have not been refunded, because I set it to refund everybody, contact me on Instagram. My Instagram's running along the bottom here. The dc.radical1 at Instagram. But the work is hard. Organizing black people at any time is hard, right? How Garvey did what he did, still mind-boggling to me. Organizing black people at a time during integration is much more difficult because black people don't see an incentive, or no, how can I put it? Black people don't see a need to be black, right? We integrated, everybody can do whatever they want, you can be whoever you want. We're at the point now where men are women, women are men. People just whatever, right? Everybody wants to be whatever they want to be. And to get black people to see, hey, this is a threat. Hey, we need to organize against this. Hey, we need to watch out for this. So forth and so on. Hey, let's help this person that's locked up or this person that's doing it or whatever the case it may be, right? It's extremely difficult to do on a good day. And there's no individual benefit for it, really, except seemingly the people who are the least sincere get the most support. I don't understand how this works. It's just been an observation. And sometimes I think that sometimes people start off sincere, right? I believe some people actually start off sincere. And whatever happens, happens, But when you put yourself out in the public, you can't turn back. You see what I'm saying? And the people who are really with you, they're going to be first ones to notice it if you change course. Like everyone here that's listening to me now, if you see me sitting around saying something to the effect of, if I was like, well, our LGBT brothers. So if I, as soon as I said that, I don't even have to finish the statement. Y'all be like, oh man, he just sold out, right? And rightfully so. In fact, it's your job. Those of you who either know me personally or just support me, listen to the show, and so forth, so on, right? Follow me on social media, things like that. It's your job to hold me accountable. Now, the other good part is I'm part of an organization, so the people in the organization, it's their job to hold me accountable as well. So, but the work is hard, it's difficult. And it's only rewarding in when you see the benefits that it gets, that other people get from it, if you understand what I'm saying. So when I see someone that has seen a lecture or listened to a show, or I recommend a book to them, or I introduce them to, like I introduced a young brother, Dr. Khalid, years ago, things like that, and I see their growth and development, that's the reward I get from it, seeing their growth and development, seeing them become a greater version of themselves. And the monetary support that I get, I greatly appreciate it, because I never thought there would be a time. I'll be completely honest. I never thought there would be a time when people would pay to hear me speak. Now, I thought, being completely honest, when I was younger, I thought there might be a time when people would pay to hear me rhyme, but not to hear me speak. And so it's just funny how life works out sometimes. Let's see. You got ripped off. Said those people ask for money for themselves. SBPM ask for race work. Indeed, indeed. And y'all have been generous and been very supportive. And so, only thing I can say before I get off is that we are going to do that. We're going to do the Dr. Khalid Day celebration. We're going to do the event. I am going to do the lecture. I plan to basically this week try to look into rescheduling and things like that. And then I guess I had to rework the flyer or come up with another flyer or something like that. And then I'll let people know, and we'll get that right this time. Because one thing I realized, and I thought about it, this is our fourth year doing it. I remember I told Jeannie told Jeannie this about something else a while ago. Once you do something for the people, then the people expect it to happen no matter what. And so we're going to do it. If I got to do it in my house, or if I got whatever, we're going to do it. And I'm going to look to do it. Right now I'm looking at February, maybe possibly as part of Black History Month. Brother, you got ripped off. Said if you got to use a cell phone for the lecture, I still pay for it. I appreciate that, brother. But of course, y'all know me. I wanted to bring something quality, so I could have done it with a cell phone. But I'm not. I've charged people. I'm not gonna do that. You know what I'm saying? We have this equipment here. We purchased. We have it. We're gonna use it, and we're gonna make it happen. So just be on the lookout for that within the next week or so. And like I said, I just had to talk to a couple of venues, and just make sure with regulations and things like that, because seemingly this stuff changes every week. And then of course I have to look out for this next week with the inauguration coming up and things like that. There's a lot of stuff happening in DC. I probably will come on later, like either Friday or Saturday, to talk about that and what's coming up with this Million Militia March and the shutdown of the city and all this stuff they got that I've seen and talked to different people about. People have put me on the information, so I spread that to the people. So with that, brothers and sisters, I appreciate everybody's support. About to get off of here and make myself something to eat. And I will talk to you all later in the week. Again, happy Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad Day. I appreciate everyone for listening. I appreciate everyone for donating. I appreciate everyone for supporting Straight Black Pride. And with that, I say a BB for Hodie and Straight Black Pride.